Well, good afternoon and welcome to this edition of Take 10 with 4-H on oral reasons. We will focus today on how to prepare and deliver a quality set of reasons for 4-H judging contests. Here are just some key steps for getting that done. I have 7 listed for you on the screen. We'll start by identifying the components that pertain to the product you're judging and its intended outcome. Then you'll view the class and take notes on those components for each product. You'll identify the pros and cons or the strengths and the faults in order to place that class. Then you'll place the class from best to worst. Then you'll identify the similarities and the difference in each pair in your comparison. You'll then compose a narrative about each comparison using complete sentences, and then finally prepare to deliver your reasons by practicing your speaking skills. In step 1, we want to identify those components that pertain or that are specific to the class that we're judging and the intended outcome of that product. For example, in your livestock classes, you're looking for marketability traits or breeding characteristics. In horse judging, you're looking more at performance or breeding characteristics. And then finally, in our consumer products and our consumer decision-making contest, we're looking more towards performance and value in each of those products. In step 2, go ahead and review the class and take notes on each component for each product. Now here, vocabulary is key, so keep in mind as you're judging animal classes, you want to pay particular attention to anatomy and body condition, including fat and muscle. And then also your proportion and conformation. You'll also want to note what's normal for those animals while they're standing and when they're in motion. In your breeding classes, you want to be able to identify feminine and masculine characteristics. And then finally, in your consumer decision-making contest, you're going to pay particular attention to those keywords in your scenario. And just a tip here for you, an effective set of reasons requires knowledge about the product you are judging. In step 3, we'll identify the pros and cons, usually in a list for each of those products within that class. And that's going to help you organize your reasons and then, or first of all, place your class and then organize your reasons, because you'll refer back to these for information to speak about. In step 4, you're going to place that class from best to worst. Here's an example of just a generic class placing 1, 2, 3, 4, but this could really be any combination of numbers depending on how you see fit. In step 5, you'll identify the similarities and differences within each pair in your comparison. For example, at the bottom of the screen in our generic class placing, your top pair is going to be between your first and second individual. Your middle pair is going to be your second and third individual, and then your bottom pair between your third and fourth. So you'll start by first of all, comparing these individuals within your pair, and you'll want to offer a positive feature and then also a negative feature that might criticize that individual. In composing your reasons, you'll want to write a narrative using complete sentences, because when you speak, you'll want to deliver that in complete sentences. And so you'll write just as you would speak. A lot of kids will just sit and write a paragraph and then practice reading that to themselves. So you'll start with your introduction, and that's usually your top individual, and you'll talk briefly why that individual stands out. And then after that, you'll move on to your top pair and in your comparison there, then your middle pair and your bottom pair. And just a tip, as you're composing your reasons, an effective set of reasons is typically a minimum of 1 minute and generally no more than 2 minutes in length. In step 7, you want to prepare to deliver those reasons. So after you've got it written out, you'll spend some time talking and just saying what you've got to say out loud. And you'll want to keep in mind your the things that are effective in speaking, and that's the 3 things at the upper left corner of the slide, and that's variation in pitch, which is the high and the low in your voice, are also known as inflection. Also, the variation in speed. So you want to think about grouping words together or ideas together with a short pause after to help your audience or your listener stay with you. And then finally, your variation in force, which is your volume. And so you want to keep in mind whenever you're offering a set of reasons, you want to project your voice and speak confidently. And then just some information here to help you kind of understand how it works. When we articulate words, it's natural to use all of the features within our mouth, including our lips, our tongue, our teeth, and how they come together, our hard and soft palates. Our facial muscles are often helpful in forming those words and also generating expression or emotion. And then your nasal passages, because we breathe in and out while we speak. So here's just a snapshot of what a set of reasons might look like. And this is very basic. As you write your reasons, you're going to fill in a lot of the parts and pieces based on the notes that you took when you were viewing the class. So let's start with number one. We'll go ahead and when you enter the room, you'll greet the judge with a simple hello and a smile. You generally don't introduce yourself just because it takes away from what you've got to say, and it really is irrelevant what your name and your county is as far as placing. Next, you'll begin promptly by saying, I place this class of whatever you're judging, and then go ahead and offer up your placing. Next, tell why the first product was at the top of the class. Tell its strengths, and there should be several because it is at the top of the class. Then you'll mention one fault if there are any. There may not be any, but if there is, you'll want to mention it just to let that judge know that you did observe that, but it was not sufficient to place that individual any lower. Then you'll move on to compare your top pair, and that's individual number 1 and number 2. You'll start by telling the strengths of product number 2. Then you'll tell the faults of number 2 compared to number 1, and that's gonna dictate or explain why number 2 placed below number 1. And in your middle pair, do the same thing, only compare product number 2 and number 3. Start with the strengths of number 3, then the faults of number 3, again compared to number 2. And then in your bottom pair, same idea, only you're comparing individual number 3 and number 4, or you're placing number 3 and number 4. Start with the strengths of product number 4, if there are any. Sometimes there are not, and that's okay. Then you're going to tell of the faults of number 4, and you should have plenty because that individual is placed at the bottom of the class. Then finally, you'll wrap up by saying, for these reasons, I place this class of whatever it is you're judging, and then offer up your placing, and then tell the judge thank you. This concludes this presentation on how to give a set of oral reasons. Thank you.